So we are going to continue on in building our form, and as you can see here, I updated our index.html. As you can see, I created a label for each of our input elements. You can see our input elements, they have a label on top of them. I created a label for the address, for the name, for the phone, and for the email. Okay, now you might be asking yourself, why did I do this? Well, we'll get to that. But as you can see here, this is our label. For example, this is our label and this is the name label. All I just did is I wrapped it inside of a label element. I wrapped it inside of a label element. Now, as you can see here, we also specified an ID of name. Now, we did this because we want to bind the label and the inputs together. So to bind the label and the input together, make sure your ID attributes match with the 4 attributes. Okay, make sure they are the same. As you can see, for the 4, the value is name, and as for the ID, the value is also name. So make sure they match together, so we can be able to bind the two together. So this is what we use to bind the label and our input together. Now you might be asking, why did I decide to construct the label like this? So let's go over to our web page and I'll show you why. Now if we refresh this now and watch as I click the label now, I click it, now you can see how it highlighted the box. You can see any of the label I click, you can see how it's highlighting the box. You can see that nice effect. So that's the very nice thing about the label. Okay. So let's go back to our index.html. Now, what we really need to do here is, let's go back to the web page. As you can see here, these boxes, they are not aligned properly. You can see they are not really aligned properly. So we need to align this properly and make it look good, because we are going to be building a very nice form here. So I was going to add another input box here, probably the submit button. But now that I look at this, we really need to start diving into the CSS part of this. Okay, we really need to start styling it with CSS. Okay, and as you can see here, I gave the form an ID. I gave the form an ID of our form. Okay, because we are going to be styling this form element, so I gave it an ID of our form. Okay, so now what we are going to do here is, to align that form properly, to align our form properly, we need to actually make our form a table. Okay, we need to make it a table so it can be able to be aligned properly. Okay, so and we also need to create a row for each of our input and our label elements. So we need to create a row for it. So what we need to do here, we are going to be creating a row div for each of our input and label elements. So say, first of all, going to say a div class of row. So we are going to do this for each of our row. We are going to do this for each of our label and input element. A div class of row. We are going to remove the div here. And we'll paste it underneath the input. We are going to do the same for the next one. Div class of row as well. Div class of row. And we'll paste it here as well. So that's how we are going to be doing for all of our input elements and for the label elements here. Let's paste it down here now. And now let's do this for our last input and label elements here. We'll say div class of row. This is for the last one here. Then we'll paste paste it underneath here. And now we have wrapped both our label and input elements inside of a row div. Okay, so each of our label and input elements, now they are inside of a row div. Okay, so this is because we want to make sure they are aligned properly. Okay, let me create some space here. So this alone won't do anything. So if we refresh it on our web page, it won't do anything. What we need to do here, we need to style our form. So that's why we gave it an ID. You can see we say ID our form. So let's go over to our styles of CSS and start working on this. So I already have this. Let me just paste it. So as you can see here, this is our ID of our form. I gave the color of white, and a display of table. Now this is the key here. This is key, a display of table. So make sure you display this in a table because we want to make our form a table. So this is key. So make sure you do this. And I also gave it a padding of 20 pixels and a background color of teal and a border 2 pixels solid black. Border of 2 pixels solid black. So if I refresh this on our web page now, refresh, now you can see this is looking pretty good, but it's not there yet. As you can see, they are still not aligned properly. As you can see, they are still not aligned properly. So we need to work with the row now. So let's go back here. We need to work with the row. So we'll come down here. We need to get the row class. So we'll say dot row. And then what we need to do, we need to display table. We need to display table row. Now, are you getting this now? We are calling our row class and we are setting it to display table row. Now, if you think of this in our index, in our HTML series, and we used to say to create a table, we used to use the tr for table row and the td for table data. But here in CSS, you just specify the table row. You don't need to specify those tr row, the tds. You don't need to do that. You just specify the table row for the row div that is holding our input and label elements. So by doing this now, by setting this to table row, this is what is going to help align our forms properly. Okay, and we are not done yet. We need to work with the label and the input. So we come down here, say dot row, and after the row, we need to get the label. So if we go over here, you can see we have our row, and after our row, we have our label. So we are following the working tree. Okay, this is the working tree in index.html. So say row and label, and then we'll open it, and then what do we want to do here? So we want to display. We're going to display this in a table cell. Now this is another key. This is what is going to help align it properly. This table cell. We are displaying this in a table cell. This is what is going to help align our form properly. Okay, it's going to align the input and it's going to align the label. So right now we need to work with the input. We have worked with the label, and we also need to work with the input. So say dot row, and after the row, this time we are not getting the label, this time we are getting the input. So if we go here, we go back here, we have the row, and after the row now we are not working with the label, this time we are working with the input. So now let's do that, and we still need to do the same thing here. We are going to do the same thing here. We are still going to give this a table cell. So we are also going to display this in a table cell, as you can see, because this is going to help align the input and the label together. So one thing we need to do here, let's just give this, the label and the input, a padding of 2 pixels. So we are going to, because we want that to look good, so we're going to give it a padding of 2 pixels. Come down here, padding 2 pixels. Now this is looking nice here. Everything is looking good. So let's go back to our web page and refresh. refresh this. Now you can see how aligned this looks. Everything is looking just good here. You can see how the label, they are straight, everything is aligned. You can see the boxes, the input boxes, they are aligned properly. So this is very good. This is how to create your form. Very good standard form here. And you can see if we still click this, the box is still highlighting. This is looking very good. Okay, so this is how to create your form, a very good form here. So this is how to create your form, a very standard and basic form here. Okay, so that will be it for this video concerning the form elements. I will see you guys in